Jack Reynolds had always been invisible to the world. A single father working 2 jobs, living paycheck to paycheck in a modest farmhouse on the outskirts of town, until that stormy Friday night when the sky literally fell before his eyes. The key small aircraft plummeted into his cornfield, flames licking at the twisted metal as rain pounded the earth. Without hesitation, Jack rushed toward danger, pulling the unconscious woman from the wreckage moments before the plane exploded. He never expected that by morning his dirt driveway would be lined with black SUVs and helicopters circling overhead. Could this mysterious woman, now revealed as the billionaire CEO of the world's largest tech company, truly change everything for a man who had long ago stopped believing in second chances? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., a harsh intrusion in the pre-dawn darkness. Jack Reynolds reached over with a calloused hand and silenced it before it could wake Lily in the next room. For a moment, he lay still, eyes fixed on the water stain that spread across the ceiling like a coffee spill. Another repair he couldn't afford to make. His body ached as he swung his legs over the side of the bed, the lingering reminder of yesterday's double shift. 42 wasn't old, but some days it felt ancient. Jack moved quietly through the familiar routine, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight as he navigated the hallway by memory rather than light. In the kitchen, Jack opened his worn leather wallet and removed a faded photograph. Sarah's smile looked back at him, frozen in time 5 years ago before the cancer took her. His thumb traced the outline of her face, a ritual as essential to his morning as brewing coffee. "Morning, Sar," he whispered. Another day. The wallet held little else. His driver's license, a military ID from another lifetime, $11, and a crumpled receipt from Lily's asthma medication. Jack tucked the photo back where it belonged and started the coffee maker, its gurgle the only sound in the sleeping house. Jack assembled Lily's lunch, peanut butter sandwich, apple, the last granola bar from the box. He scribbled a note on a paper napkin. "Have a great day, kiddo. Science project looking amazing. Love, Dad." These daily messages were his attempt to be present when he couldn't physically be there. By 5:15, Jack was behind the wheel of his pickup, the engine protesting as he turned the key. The truck had over 200,000 miles and needed a new transmission, but like everything else in Jack's life, it would have to wait. The mechanically inclined part of his brain catalogued the concerning sounds as he drove through darkened streets toward Peterson's auto shop. "Morning, Jack." Earl Peterson nodded as Jack punched his time card at 5:30 sharp. "Got the Henderson minivan waiting. Needs new brake pads and rotors." Jack nodded, already reaching for his coveralls. "I'll get it done before lunch." For the next 6 hours, Jack disappeared into the familiar world of engines and parts. Here, problems had solutions. Unlike the stack of medical bills that still haunted him, unlike the mortgage payments that kept him awake at night, unlike the look in Lily's eyes when he missed another school event, cars made sense. You identified the problem. You fixed it. You moved on. At noon, Jack washed the grease from his hands, changed his shirt in the bathroom, and drove across town for his second job. The Silver Spoon Diner sat on the corner of Main and Elm, its neon sign flickering even in daylight. Jack parked in the back, nodding to Manny, the dishwasher, who was stealing a cigarette break by the dumpster. "Jack!" Rosa, the owner, called as he entered through the kitchen. "Table 6 has been asking for you. The Hendricks want to know if you can look at their son's college applications this weekend." Jack forced a smile. The Hendricks were good people, tipped well, and somehow got the impression that Jack, with his military background and what they called common-sense wisdom, would be useful in guiding their son's future. They didn't seem to understand that Jack's own future was held together with duct tape and prayer. "Sure thing, Rosa. Tell them I'll stop by Sunday if I can." 4 hours of refilling coffee cups, taking orders, and navigating the complex social web of small-town dining later, Jack checked his watch. 3 o'clock. Time to call Mrs. Rodriguez. She's fine, Jack, the elderly woman assured him over the phone. Doing her homework at the kitchen table, I made her a snack. Thanks, Mrs. R. I'll be there by 6:30. No rush, mijo. She is like my own granddaughter. Jack knew Mrs. Rodriguez meant well, but the words stung. Lily deserved more than an absent father and a kind neighbor. Sarah would have been disappointed in how things had turned out. 2 more hours at the diner, then Jack drove back to Peterson's for another 3 hours. By the time he pulled into his driveway at 6:45 p.m., exhaustion had settled into his bones like concrete. The modest 2-story farmhouse, his grandfather's legacy, and the only thing of value Jack hadn't been forced to sell during Sarah's illness, looked tired in the fading light, its white paint peeling, the porch steps sagging. "Dad!" Lily called as he entered. She sat at the kitchen table, her science project spread across the surface, a detailed model of an aircraft wing with handwritten notes about aerodynamics. At 12, Lily had her mother's intelligence and curiosity, traits that simultaneously filled Jack with pride and dread. Pride in who she was becoming, dread that he couldn't provide the opportunities she deserved. "Hey, kiddo!" Jack mustered the energy to sound enthusiastic. "That's looking great!" "Mrs. Rodriguez helped me with the calculations," Lily explained, her eyes bright. "Did you know that the curvature of the wing creates different air pressures? That's what makes planes fly. Is that right?" Jack set down his keys and took a moment to really look at his daughter's work. "Your mom would be impressed. She always said you'd be the scientist in the family." Lily's smile faltered slightly at the mention of her mother, but she nodded. "I think she'd like it." Jack checked the refrigerator. Milk running low, vegetables looking limp. Another grocery trip needed, another expense. He cobbled together a simple dinner, listening as Lily talked about school, her friends, her teachers. He asked questions, made appropriate noises of interest, while mentally calculating whether the electric bill could wait another week. After dinner, Jack helped Lily with her homework, then watched her brush her teeth and get ready for bed. Their nighttime routine was sacred, the one part of the day when Jack felt like he was doing something right. "Dad?" Lily asked as he tucked her in. "Are we going to be okay?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course we are. Why do you ask?" Lily shrugged, suddenly looking younger than her 12 years. "I heard Mrs. Rodriguez talking on the phone. She said something about the bank and you working too hard." Jack swallowed hard. "Mrs. Rodriguez worries too much. We're fine, lily pad. I promise." The lie tasted bitter, but he maintained his smile until he closed her door. In the hallway, Jack leaned against the wall, the weight of his promises pressing down on him. The letter from the bank sat on the kitchen counter where he'd left it this morning, the 3rd notice about the mortgage. 3 months behind now. Jack picked up the letter, read it again as if the words might have changed. They hadn't. With a heavy sigh, he placed it back on the counter and headed to his bedroom. Tomorrow would be another day, exactly like this one. Wake up, work, worry, repeat. He sat on the edge of his bed, too tired to even remove his boots. Jack glanced at the photograph on his nightstand. Him, Sarah, and a 6-year-old Lily, all smiles at the county fair. A lifetime ago. "I'm trying, Sar," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm really trying." Outside, dark clouds gathered on the horizon and a weather alert chimed on his phone. Severe thunderstorms expected overnight. Jack's last thought before sleep claimed him was that he should check the roof for leaks. Another task for another day that already didn't have enough. Hours. 60 floors above San Francisco, Alexandra Chen stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching fog roll beneath the Golden Gate Bridge. At 38, she had achieved what most would consider impossible: building Horizon. Technologies from a garage startup into a global empire valued at over $30 billion. The company's accessibility software had revolutionized how people with disabilities interacted with technology, earning her the cover of Forbes twice and a permanent place on lists of the most powerful women in business. Alexandra's reflection stared back at her. Sleek black bob, minimal makeup, the tailored charcoal suit that had become something of a uniform. A costume, really, for the role she played every day. The brilliant, untouchable CEO, Ms. Chen, her assistant's voice came through the intercom. The board is assembled in the conference room. Alexandra straightened her shoulders. Thank you, Michael. I'll be right there. She collected her custom tablet from her desk, a prototype not available to the public. The device contained the blueprints for Horizon's next leap forward, neural interface technology that would allow people with severe mobility limitations to control computers using only minimal eye movements. The project, codenamed Icarus, represented 5 years of research and hundreds of millions in development costs. It was also the reason for today's meeting. The conference room fell silent as Alexandra entered. 12 faces turned toward her, the Horizon Technologies Board of Directors, all men over 50, except for one woman in her early 60s. Alexandra had long ago stopped noticing she was often the youngest person in rooms where the most significant decisions were made. "Good morning," she began, connecting her tablet to the presentation system. "I've called this meeting to discuss final preparations for the Icarus launch. As you know, we're 6 weeks out from the public announcement." For the next hour, Alexandra led the board through projections, technical specifications, and marketing strategies. She answered questions with precision, never revealing more than necessary. The board members nodded approvingly at the revenue forecasts. "One final matter," Alexandra concluded. "I'll be conducting a series of private meetings with our top potential investors next week. I've arranged these discussions away from Silicon Valley to avoid media attention." Martin Geller, the board chairman, frowned. "Where exactly?" "A small town in Oregon." "I'll be flying out tomorrow evening." "Commercial flight?" Geller asked. Alexandra shook her head. "I'll pilot myself. It's more discreet." Murmurs circulated around the table. Everyone knew Alexandra was a skilled pilot. Her grandfather had taught her to fly when she was 16, but her insistence on piloting herself, especially for business matters, remained a point of contention. "Alexandra," Geller said, using her first name to indicate he was speaking as a friend rather than chairman, "I understand your preference, but with the Icarus announcement approaching, perhaps it would be prudent to—" "Thank you for your concern, Martin." Alexandra cut him off politely but firmly. "My decision is made. Now, if there's nothing else—" The meeting adjourned and Alexandra returned to her office, where Michael waited with her afternoon schedule. "The weather report for Oregon doesn't look promising," Michael said, handing her a printout. "Thunderstorms expected tomorrow night." Alexandra barely glanced at the paper. "I've flown in worse." Michael hesitated. "There's also this." He handed her a business magazine. On the cover stood Victor Mercer, CEO of Mercer Technologies, Alexandra's chief rival. The headline read, "Mercer's next move. Will the tech giant finally overtake Horizon?" Alexandra scanned the article, which speculated about Mercer's rumored new product line. "Typical posturing," she said, tossing the magazine aside. "Victor's been trying to catch up since we launched our first accessibility platform. He's been making inquiries," Michael said carefully, "about Icarus." Alexandra's eyes narrowed. "What kind of inquiries?" "The usual corporate espionage attempts, reaching out to our engineers with job offers, probing our partners for information. Increase security protocols," Alexandra instructed, "and schedule a meeting with legal before I leave tomorrow." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, decisions, and problem-solving. Alexandra moved through it all with practiced efficiency, never showing fatigue or indecision. By 7 in the evening, the office had emptied, but she remained, reviewing code for the Icarus project. Her phone rang, the private line few people had access to. "Hello, grandfather," she answered, her voice softening. "Xiao Zhen," her grandfather replied, using the Chinese nickname he'd given her as a child. "You're still working." "Just finishing up," she said. though they both knew it was a half-truth. "The weather looks bad for flying tomorrow," he said. At 84, Chen Weiming still tracked weather patterns with the diligence of the Air Force. Pilot he'd once been. "I'll be fine, grandfather. I learned from the best." A chuckle came through the line. "So stubborn, like your grandmother." A pause. "You should visit soon. The cherry trees are blossoming." "After the Icarus launch," Alexandra promised. 6 more weeks. "Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans," he quoted, as he often did. John Lennon. "I know, grandfather. I'll try to come sooner." After the call ended, Alexandra stood and stretched. She walked to her private washroom and splashed water on her face, studying her reflection. Sometimes, in rare moments of honesty with herself, she wondered if success had been worth the price. No husband, no children, few. Real friends. Just an empire built on brilliant ideas and relentless work. Alexandra pushed the thought away. She had created technology that helped millions of people live better lives. That was enough. It had to be. She collected her tablet and headed to the private elevator that would take her to the underground parking garage. Her Tesla waited in its reserved spot, but Alexandra barely noticed the luxury vehicle as she slid behind the wheel. Her mind was already on tomorrow's flight. The drive to her penthouse apartment took 20 minutes. Unlike her office, Alexandra's home was surprisingly modest in its furnishings, comfortable but uncluttered, with large windows overlooking the bay and walls adorned with her grandfather's photography. No assistant, no housekeeper. Her private space remained private. Alexandra poured a single glass of wine and sat at her kitchen island, opening her tablet. She reviewed the flight plan for tomorrow, a 2-hour journey to a small municipal airport near Riverdale, Oregon. From there, she would meet with 3 potential investors who controlled funds that could help expand Icarus globally. A notification appeared on her screen, an email from Victor Mercer. The subject line read simply, "Before you announce Icarus." Alexandra hesitated before opening it. "Alexandra," the email began without preamble. "Rumor has it your neural interface technology is ready for market. Before you make any announcements, I'd like to discuss a potential collaboration. Horizon's software expertise combined with Mercer's hardware division could create something truly revolutionary. Consider it. VM." Alexandra deleted the email without replying. Victor had been trying to get access to Horizon's technology for years, first through partnership offers, then through hiring away her employees, and occasionally through less ethical means. She had no intention of sharing Icarus, not when Horizon was poised to change the world again. She finished her wine and prepared for bed, setting her alarm for 5 a.m. Tomorrow would be a long day, culminating in the evening flight to Oregon. As she drifted toward sleep, Alexandra thought of her grandfather's words about the cherry blossoms. How long had it been since she'd taken time to notice such things? Years, probably. After Icarus, she murmured to herself. After Icarus, she would find balance. After Icarus, she would visit her grandfather more often. After Icarus, perhaps she would even take a vacation. Alexandra fell asleep to the sound of distant thunder, unaware that the storm forming hundreds of miles away would change everything she had planned for her carefully ordered life. The storm arrived earlier than forecast, turning the Friday evening shift at the Silver Spoon Diner into a quiet affair. Rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rumbled in the distance, keeping most regular customers at home. Jack wiped down the counter for the 3rd time in an hour, glancing occasionally at the clock. Rosa had already suggested he head home early, but Jack couldn't afford to lose the hours. "Jack, this is ridiculous," Rosa finally said at 8 o'clock, hands on her hips. "We've had 2 customers in the last hour. Go home to your daughter. I'll still pay you for the full shift." Jack started to protest, but Rosa waved him off. "I'm not arguing. The roads are getting worse. Go now while you still can." With reluctant gratitude, Jack hung up his apron and collected his jacket. The rain had intensified, creating a grey wall of water outside the diner's windows. He called, Mrs. Rodriguez to let her know he was heading home early. Gracias a Dios, the elderly woman replied. This storm is not good. The power is already flickering. Jack's truck struggled through puddles that were rapidly becoming small ponds on the rural roads. The windshield wipers worked frantically but couldn't quite keep up with the deluge. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the landscape in brief, harsh flashes. In one such flash, Jack caught sight of something in the sky that didn't belong. There, a small aircraft flying dangerously low. What the hell, Jack muttered, slowing the truck to better track the plane. It was a single-engine craft, the kind wealthy hobbyists flew, and it appeared to be in trouble. Even with his limited knowledge of aviation, Jack could tell the plane was fighting to maintain altitude, its path erratic against the storm-darkened sky. Another lightning strike revealed the aircraft banking sharply, descending rapidly. Jack pulled his truck to the shoulder of the road, eyes fixed on the struggling plane. He reached for his phone, dialing 911 with one hand, while keeping his gaze on the aircraft. "Wevan, what's your emergency?" "There's a plane going down," Jack reported, voice steady from years of military training that taught him to remain calm in crisis. "Small aircraft, looks like a single engine. It's about to crash in the fields off County Road 27, near the old Miller property." "Sir, can you verify your location?" "We're receiving multiple emergency calls due to the storm, and response times may be—" The dispatcher's voice faded from Jack's awareness as he witnessed the plane's engine sputter and fail. The aircraft went silent for one terrible moment, then began a spiraling descent. Jack dropped the phone and threw his truck into drive, racing down the road toward where he anticipated the crash. The plane disappeared behind a line of trees, just as Jack turned onto a muddy access road that cut through the cornfields. He heard the impact before he saw it, a sickening crunch of metal followed by a muffled explosion. When he rounded the bend, the crashed aircraft came into view, its nose buried in the soft, rain-soaked earth of his own cornfield, about half a mile from his house. Jack abandoned his truck and ran toward the wreckage, rain soaking him instantly. The plane had broken into several pieces, with the cockpit relatively intact, but the wings sheared off. A small fire had started, despite the rain, flames licking at the twisted metal near what remained of the engine. Years of army training took over. Jack assessed the scene, looking for the safest approach to the cockpit. The door was damaged, but not completely crushed. He could see movement inside. Someone was alive. The smell of aviation fuel permeated the air, mixing with the rain and mud. Jack knew he had minutes, perhaps seconds, before a larger explosion was possible. He worked his way to the cockpit door, finding it jammed but not completely sealed. With a strength born of urgency, he braced himself against the fuselage and pulled at the handle. Metal groaned in protest, but the door shifted slightly. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Jack shouted over the storm and the crackling flames. "I'm going to get you out." A faint moan came from inside. The pilot was conscious, at least partially. Jack redoubled his efforts, ignoring the sharp metal that sliced into his palm as he worked the door. With a sudden give, the door wrenched open enough for him to peer inside. A woman was strapped into the pilot's seat, head slumped forward. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her right arm was bent at an unnatural angle. Dark hair obscured her face, but her shallow breathing confirmed she was alive. "Ma'am, I need to get you out of here right now," Jack said firmly, reaching for the seatbelt release. The plane could go at any moment. The woman stirred slightly, eyes fluttering. Open for a brief moment. "What happened?" she whispered. "Your plane crashed. I'm going to help you, but we need to move fast." Jack worked the seatbelt free and carefully assessed how to extract her without causing further injury. Her right arm was definitely broken, and he suspected she had a concussion based on her disorientation. The fire spread to another portion of the wreckage, and Jack knew their time had run out. With as much care as haste would allow, he slid one arm under her knees and the other behind her shoulders, lifting her from the cockpit. She was lighter than he expected, her body limp against his chest as he navigated away from the wreckage. Jack had carried her about 50 yards when the fire reached the fuel tank. The explosion knocked him forward, the concussive force throwing them both to the ground. Jack instinctively curled his body around the injured woman, shielding her from debris that rained down around them. For several moments they lay in the mud, the heat of the burning plain at their backs, contrasting with the cold rain pelting them from above. Jack quickly checked the woman for new injuries from the fall, relieved to find none immediately apparent. She had lost consciousness again, her features peaceful despite the circumstances. With the immediate danger from the explosion past, Jack lifted her once more and began the long walk through the storm toward his house. The rain had turned the fields to mud, making each step a struggle. Jack's muscles burned with effort, but he pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this woman's life depended on him. He glanced down at her face, illuminated briefly by another flash of lightning. Despite the smudges of ash and blood, he could tell she was striking. High cheekbones, defined jawline, the kind of face that commanded attention. Her clothes, what he could see of them beneath her flight jacket, were clearly expensive. A substantial watch glinted on her left wrist, its face cracked from the impact. Jack's phone had been left behind in his truck, and he knew the rural emergency services would be overwhelmed by the storm. Even if they weren't, the flooded roads would slow their response significantly. The woman's best chance was the basic first aid he could provide at his house, until help became available. After what seemed like an eternity, Jack's farmhouse came into view. Lights glowed warmly in the windows, a beacon in the storm. As he approached the porch, the front door flew open and Lily appeared, eyes widening at the sight of her father carrying an unconscious woman. "Dad! What happened?" Lily gasped, holding the door wider. "Plane crash in our field," Jack explained, his voice strained from exertion. "Call 911 again. Tell them we have an injured pilot who needs immediate medical attention." Lily ran for the phone while Jack carried the woman to the living room sofa. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared from the kitchen, her hand flying to her mouth at the sight. "Dios mío, is she... she's alive," Jack assured her, gently laying the woman down. "But she needs help. The storm's knocked out cell service, and I'm not sure an ambulance can get through the flooded roads." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded, already moving toward the bathroom. "I will get towels and the first aid kit." Jack carefully removed the woman's sodden flight jacket, revealing an elegant blouse underneath. He checked her pulse, steady but weak, and examined the break in her right arm. Not a compound fracture, fortunately, but it needed to be stabilized. Lily returned, her young face serious. "The 911 operator said all emergency services are backed up because of the storm. They'll send someone as soon as they can, but it might be hours." Jack nodded grimly. "Then we do what we can until they get here." Mrs. Rodriguez returned with towels, bandages, and an emergency blanket Jack kept from his army days. Together, they worked to make the injured woman as comfortable as possible, cleaning her wounds, fashioning a makeshift splint for her arm, elevating her feet to combat shock. Throughout their ministrations, the woman remained unconscious, her breathing shallow but regular. Once they had done all they could, Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on staying to help, settling into the armchair with her rosary beads while Jack kept watch by the sofa. "Dad," Lily whispered, kneeling beside him. "Who is she?" Jack shook his head. "I don't know, kiddo. Just someone who needed help." As the night wore on, the storm gradually began to subside. Mrs. Rodriguez eventually dozed off in the armchair, and Jack sent Lily to bed despite her protests. Every hour, Jack checked the woman's vital signs, noting with relief that her condition seemed stable. Sometime after midnight, her eyelids fluttered, and she briefly regained consciousness. "Where?" she murmured, confusion clouding her dark eyes. "You're safe," Jack assured her, his voice low and calm. "Your plane crashed. I brought you to my home. Help is coming." Fear flashed across her face as memories returned. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Easy," Jack said, gently pressing. Her shoulder back down. "You have a broken arm and probably a concussion. You need to stay still." "My tablet," she whispered urgently. "From the plane, I'm sorry," Jack said. "There was no time to grab anything. The plane exploded shortly after I got you out." Distress crossed her features before exhaustion claimed her again, pulling her back into unconsciousness. Jack adjusted the emergency blanket around her and resumed his vigil, wondering who this woman was and what had been so important on that tablet. Outside, the storm continued its slow retreat, unaware it had set in motion events that would change multiple lives forever. Dawn arrived with tentative fingers of light pushing through the storm clouds. Jack, who had dozed fitfully in the armchair beside the sofa, awoke to the sound of movement. The woman was stirring, her eyes blinking open to take in unfamiliar surroundings. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse but carried unmistakable authority, even in confusion. "My home," Jack answered, leaning forward. "I'm Jack Reynolds. Your plane crashed in my field last night during the storm. Do you remember anything?" She raised her left hand to the bandage on her forehead, wincing. "Bits and pieces. The engine failed. I couldn't maintain altitude." Her gaze fell to her splinted right arm. "You pulled me out," Jack nodded. "Got you out just before the plane exploded. I'm afraid there wasn't much left." A flash of alarm crossed her face. "My tablet!" "I'm sorry," Jack said. "There wasn't time to salvage anything." She closed her eyes briefly, processing this information. When she opened them again, her gaze was sharper, more focused. "Alexandra Chen," she said, "and I owe you my life, Mr. Reynolds." The name stirred a vague recognition in Jack. He'd seen it somewhere, newspaper headlines perhaps, or one of Lily's technology magazines. "Jack is fine," he replied, "and anyone would have done the same." A small, knowing smile touched Alexandra's lips. "We both know that's not true." She attempted to sit up, grimacing with the effort. Jack moved to assist her, arranging pillows to support her back. "Easy. You've got a concussion and a broken arm. The roads were flooded last night, so emergency services couldn't get through. I should check if they're clear now." As if on cue, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day. "The phones are working again," she announced, "and the roads are passable. Shall I call for an ambulance?" "Please." Jack nodded. "And some coffee, I think," Mrs. Rodriguez added, her kind eyes assessing Alexandra. "You look like you could use it, dear." Once Mrs. Rodriguez had left, Alexandra's gaze traveled around the modest living room, taking in the worn furniture, the family photos, the science project materials scattered on the dining table. Her eyes lingered on an old photograph of Jack. "In military uniform, Army?" she asked. 10 years, mechanic with the 3rd Infantry Division." Alexandra nodded, then glanced at her damaged watch. An elegant timepiece that probably cost more than Jack's truck. The glass was cracked, and the hands had stopped at 8:47. "What time is it now?" "Just after 6, Jack replied. Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, eyes wide with curiosity. "Dad, is she awake?" Jack beckoned his daughter forward. "Lily, this is Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen, my daughter Lily." "Alexandra, please," she corrected, offering Lily a smile that transformed her face, softening the executive into something more approachable. "That's an impressive project you're working on." She nodded toward the dining table. Lily brightened immediately. "It's about aerodynamics. For the science fair. I'm showing how different wing designs affect lift and drag. I'd love to hear more." "About it," Alexandra said, and to Jack's surprise, she seemed genuinely interested rather than merely polite. Mrs. Rodriguez returned with coffee for the adults and hot chocolate for Lily. "Ambulance will be here in 20 minutes, she reported. "The storm has cleared, but there are many emergencies this morning." Alexandra took a careful sip of coffee. "This is excellent, thank you." She turned to Jack. "I need to contact my office. They'll be concerned when I didn't arrive for my meetings." "Phone's in the kitchen," Jack offered, "though cell service should be working again too." Alexandra reached into her pocket and produced a sleek smartphone, surprisingly intact, reinforced. "Case," she explained, seeing Jack's expression. "I work in tech. We prepare for accidents." She made a brief call, speaking in clipped, precise sentences to someone named Michael, explaining her situation without unnecessary details. The person on the other end apparently had many questions, which Alexandra answered with growing impatience. "Yes, Michael, I understand the implications. No, the prototype wasn't recovered. Send the helicopter to—" She glanced at Jack questioningly. "1478 County Road 27, Riverdale," he supplied. Alexandra relayed the address. "And Michael, discretion is essential." She ended the call and exhaled slowly. "My team will be here within 2 hours." "Team?" Jack asked. "Horizon Technologies," Alexandra clarified. "I'm the CEO." Now Jack placed the name. Horizon Technologies was one of the largest tech companies in the world, known for its innovative accessibility software. Its founder and CEO was indeed a woman, named Alexandra Chen, whose face occasionally appeared on business magazines. Lily's eyes widened. "You make the TouchSpeak app. My friend Jamie uses it. He has cerebral palsy, and it helps him talk to us." Alexandra's expression softened again. "That's right. It's one of our most important products." "And you're a pilot too?" Lily asked, impressed. "My grandfather taught me," Alexandra confirmed. "He was a fighter pilot." The conversation continued. Over breakfast, which Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on preparing despite Alexandra's protests. Jack observed the strange tableau. His daughter chatting animatedly with a billionaire CEO in their humble kitchen, while his elderly neighbor fussed over them all. Alexandra answered Lily's questions about technology and flight with genuine engagement, occasionally stopping to press her hand against her temple when the pain from her concussion flared. Despite her injuries and disheveled appearance, she maintained an aura of quiet authority. When Lily explained her science project in greater detail, Alexandra listened attentively, then made several suggestions that had Lily scribbling notes. Excitedly, Jack watched in amazement as this powerful executive, who likely commanded boardrooms and managed billions in assets, took his daughter's project as seriously as any corporate initiative. "You have a remarkable daughter, Jack," Alexandra commented when Lily went to retrieve her project notebook. "She has an intuitive understanding of engineering principles." "Gets her intelligence from her mother," Jack said, a familiar ache accompanying the words. "Sarah was the smart one." "Was?" Alexandra asked gently. "Cancer, 5 years ago." Alexandra's expression showed genuine sympathy, untainted by pity. "I'm sorry for your loss." The conversation paused as the sound of vehicles approaching drew their attention. Jack looked out the window, expecting to see an ambulance. Instead, a convoy of black SUVs was making its way up his dirt driveway, followed by the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. "Your team, I presume?" he said, turning back to Alexandra. She nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. "I apologize for the intrusion. They tend to overreact." Within minutes, Jack's quiet farmhouse was transformed into a hive of activity. Security personnel in discreet suits secured the perimeter, medical staff attended to Alexandra, and a harried-looking man in his early 30s, whom Jack assumed was Michael, hovered anxiously nearby, tablet in hand. "The board is demanding updates," he was saying to Alexandra, "and the investors are threatening to pull out if we don't reschedule immediately." "Michael," Alexandra cut him off firmly, "I nearly died last night. If Mr. Reynolds hadn't risked his life to pull me from that wreckage, you'd be planning a very different press conference right now. So before we discuss anything else, I need you to ensure he's properly thanked." Michael blinked, then turned to Jack with newfound appreciation. "Of course, Mr. Reynolds, we're incredibly grateful. Anything you need, anything at all, Horizon Technologies is at your service." Jack shifted uncomfortably under the attention, just did what anyone would do. Alexandra caught his eye from where medics were examining her, a knowing look passing. Between them, they both recognized the polite fiction in his words. Not everyone would have run toward a burning plane in a thunderstorm. The weight of that shared understanding lingered between them as the medical team prepared to transport Alexandra to the waiting helicopter. The storm had passed, but its aftermath lingered. Roads remained partially flooded, power outages affected scattered areas throughout the county, and the local news reported numerous accidents and property damage. These circumstances, combined with Alexandra's condition, led the medical team to a reluctant conclusion. While her injuries weren't life-threatening, transporting her to San Francisco immediately wasn't advisable. She needed at least 24 hours of rest before undertaking the journey. "I'll arrange accommodations at the nearest suitable hotel," Michael declared, fingers already flying across his tablet. "That won't be necessary," Alexandra said, surprising everyone, including herself. "If Mr. Reynolds doesn't object, I'd prefer to remain here overnight." Jack, who had been quietly observing the corporate invasion of his home, raised his eyebrows. "You're welcome to stay, but I'm sure you'd be more comfortable at a hotel." Alexandra shook her head, then winced at the movement. "The nearest decent hotel is over an hour away. Here, I can truly rest without journalists potentially catching wind of my location." She glanced at Michael. "And I suspect my security team would prefer a location they've already assessed." The head of security, a stoic woman named Diana, nodded almost imperceptibly. Jack recognized military bearing when he saw it. Former special forces, if he had to guess. "We'll maintain a discreet presence," Diana stated. "2 team members on rotation, and we'll handle all communications protocols." Jack found himself agreeing to this arrangement, though the thought of hosting a billionaire CEO overnight in his modest farmhouse was mildly terrifying. Mrs. Rodriguez, however, seemed delighted by the challenge, immediately taking inventory of the pantry and declaring that she would prepare a proper dinner worthy of their guest. Most of Alexandra's entourage departed by mid-morning, leaving behind only Diana, another security team member named Carter, and a medical assistant who would monitor Alexandra throughout the day. Michael reluctantly returned to San Francisco. On the helicopter, clutching a list of urgent instructions from his boss. With the house relatively quiet again, Lily eagerly returned to her science project, emboldened by Alexandra's earlier interest. To Jack's surprise, Alexandra asked to be moved to the dining table so she could observe. "The trick with wing design," Alexandra explained, as Lily adjusted the paper airfoil on her model, "is finding the perfect balance between lift and stability." Jack, working in the kitchen to repair a leaky faucet that had worsened during the storm, listened to their conversation with growing amazement. Alexandra spoke to Lily without condescension, explaining complex aerodynamic principles in terms the 12-year-old could understand without oversimplifying the science. "My grandfather would say that flying is just a constant negotiation with gravity," Alexandra told Lily. "You're not defeating it, you're just convincing it to make an exception for you for a little while." Lily giggled at this, carefully measuring the curve of her wing design. "Did your grandfather teach you how to build planes too? Or just fly them?" "Both," Alexandra smiled. "He was an engineer before he became a pilot. He always said you shouldn't fly anything unless you understand how it works." Jack finished with the faucet and wiped his hands on a kitchen towel. "Sounds like a wise man." "He is," Alexandra nodded. "He's 84 now and still designs model aircraft for fun." The conversation flowed naturally as the day progressed. Jack prepared lunch, refusing offers of help from the security team, who had apparently been instructed to arrange for catering. "In my house, we eat what I cook," he informed them politely but firmly. Alexandra seemed amused by his stubborn independence. During lunch, she observed Jack and Lily's easy rapport with obvious appreciation. "You two have a special relationship," she commented. Lily nodded earnestly. "Dad's the best. He works really hard so I can have everything I need." She lowered her voice to a stage whisper. "Even though I know we don't have a lot of money." Jack felt his face flush. "Lily, it's okay," Alexandra interjected smoothly. "I grew up without much money either, Lily. My grandfather raised me after my parents died, and we lived very simply." "Really?" Lily's eyes widened. But you're super rich now. I Googled you while you were talking to your assistant. You're worth billions. Lily! Jack exclaimed, mortified. Alexandra laughed, the sound surprisingly light and genuine. It's fine, Jack. And yes, Lily, my company's worth billions now, but it wasn't always that way. I started Horizon Technologies in a garage with just one computer and a lot of determination. As afternoon settled into evening, Alexandra received a package from one of her security team, a sleek metal case containing a replacement tablet. Jack watched as she powered it on, her expression shifting subtly from relaxed guest to focused executive. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, occasionally pausing to dictate notes or respond to messages. "I'm sorry," she said, catching Jack watching her. "I should be resting, but there are some matters I can't delegate." "No need to apologize," Jack assured her. "I understand responsibility." Their eyes met briefly in mutual recognition. Different as their lives were, they both carried weights that couldn't be set down easily. Mrs. Rodriguez outdid herself with dinner, preparing her special paella that was reserved for important occasions. The meal brought everyone to the table: Jack, Lily, Alexandra, and even the security team, who relaxed their professional demeanor slightly in the face of Mrs. Rodriguez's insistence that no one stands guard during dinner in my kitchen. As they ate, Alexandra shared stories of her early days building her company, carefully edited for a 12-year-old's ears, but still conveying the challenges and triumphs of creating something from nothing. Jack found himself drawn into her narrative, impressed by her persistence and vision. In turn, Jack spoke of his military service, his life with Sarah, and the adjustments of becoming a single father. Alexandra listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that suggested she valued his experiences. After dinner, while Lily finished her homework and Mrs. Rodriguez supervised, Jack found Alexandra examining the family photographs on the living room mantel. "She looks like you," Alexandra commented, studying a picture of Sarah. "Your wife, around the eyes and smile." Jack nodded, the familiar ache in his chest present but muted. Everyone said that. She was the smart one, like I mentioned. Environmental scientist, brilliant mind. "I'm sorry you lost her," Alexandra said simply. "It must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," Jack acknowledged. "Still is sometimes. But Lily needed me to keep going, so I did." Alexandra nodded, her gaze drifting to a photo of Jack's truck. "Is that the same vehicle you drive now?" "Good eye." "Yes, it was my grandfather's. Been restoring it for years, though it needs a new transmission I can't afford right now." "You're good with machines," Alexandra observed. "I noticed how you fixed that faucet earlier. Methodical, efficient. Military training?" "Partly," Jack shrugged. "I've always been able to figure out how things work, how to fix them when they break. Machines make sense to me," Alexandra smiled. "I understand that completely. People are complicated. Technology follows rules even when it fails." The evening wound down peacefully. Alexandra, exhausted from her ordeal despite her attempts to hide it, retired to Lily's room, Lily having enthusiastically volunteered to sleep on the couch for their special guest. Jack made up the sofa for his daughter, listening to her excited whispers about how cool Alexandra was and how amazing it was that she'd crashed right in our field. Later, after the house had grown quiet, Jack sat on the porch steps, watching the security team perform their discreet perimeter checks. The night was clear, stars emerging in brilliant contrast to the previous evening's storm. Jack found himself wondering about the strange twist of fate that had brought Alexandra Chen into their lives, and whether tomorrow's departure would be the end of their brief intersection with her world. Jack awoke to the rhythmic thrum of helicopter blades. Dawn had barely broken, painting the sky in muted pinks and golds as he stepped onto the porch. Two sleek corporate helicopters hovered above his property, while a small fleet of black SUVs lined his dirt driveway. The modest farmhouse that had sheltered generations of Reynolds family members suddenly seemed incongruously small against this display of corporate might. Diana approached from the security perimeter. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. Miss Chen's executive team has arrived to facilitate her return to San Francisco. She's asked to speak with you before departure." Jack nodded, still processing the surreal tableau of wealth and power descending on his humble homestead. Inside, he found Alexandra seated at the kitchen table, looking remarkably composed despite her injuries. She wore fresh clothes that had evidently been delivered overnight, simple but unmistakably expensive. Her right arm remained in a sling, but her overall demeanor suggested someone firmly back in command. "Jack," she greeted him, gesturing to the chair opposite her. "Please join me." He sat down, noticing the array of tablets and phones surrounding her, each attended by a different assistant. At a subtle signal from Alexandra, the staff retreated to give them privacy. "I wanted to thank you properly," Alexandra began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. "What you did, running toward danger rather than away from it, speaks volumes about your character." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have—" "No," Alexandra interrupted gently. "Not anyone. Trust me, I've spent my career assessing people's characters. What you did was extraordinary, and I don't use that word lightly." She nodded to Michael, who had materialized beside her with remarkable efficiency. He placed a leather portfolio on the table and retreated. "I've arranged for your truck to be repaired. New transmission, complete overhaul. The work begins today. I've also taken the liberty of addressing your mortgage situation. The bank has been instructed that your payments are covered for the next 3 months, providing you some breathing room." Jack stiffened. "Ms. Chen, Alexandra, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept charity." A hint of amusement flickered across her face. "It's not charity, Jack. It's compensation for saving my life, which is worth considerably more than a truck transmission and a few mortgage payments." Her expression softened. "Please allow me this small gesture. I respect your pride, but sometimes accepting help is its own form of strength." Before Jack could formulate a response, Lily burst into the kitchen, already dressed for school, but skidding to a halt at the sight of the corporate entourage visible through the windows. "Whoa," she breathed, eyes wide. "Are those your helicopters?" Alexandra smiled warmly at her. "They are! My team is eager to get me back to San Francisco." Lily's face fell slightly. "Oh, you're leaving now?" "I'm afraid I must," Alexandra confirmed. "But I wanted to thank you for sharing your home with me and for showing me your remarkable science project." Lily brightened at the mention of her project. "I'm going to try your suggestions today. The new wing design should definitely increase lift efficiency. I have no doubt," Alexandra said. She hesitated, then added, "Actually, I'd like to extend an invitation to both of you. Horizon Technologies is hosting a special event at our headquarters next month for the launch of a new product. I'd be honored if you would attend as my personal guests." Jack began to decline politely, but Lily's excitement was impossible to contain. "Really, in San Francisco, Dad, can we go, please?" Her eyes shone with the enthusiasm Jack hadn't seen since before Sarah's illness. Alexandra watched their interaction with a carefully neutral expression, though Jack caught the hopeful glint in her eyes. "All expenses would be covered, of course," she added. "Flights, hotel, everything. It would mean a great deal to me." Jack found himself nodding, unable to deny his daughter's excitement or, surprisingly, his own curiosity about Alexandra's world. "That's very generous. Thank you." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of activity. Alexandra's team efficiently prepared for departure, while local media began gathering at the end of the driveway, word having spread about the famous CEO's presence. Jack watched with growing discomfort as news vans accumulated, their satellite dishes raised like periscopes. "Seeking a story." "I apologize for the circus," Alexandra said, appearing beside him at the window. "My PR team is arranging a brief statement that should satisfy them without revealing too much." "What will you tell them?" Jack asked. "The essentials: aircraft malfunction, crash landing, heroic local resident." She smiled slightly. "Unless you'd prefer to remain anonymous?" Jack nodded. "If possible, I'm not looking for attention." "I understand," Alexandra assured him. "We'll respect your privacy." When the time came for departure, Alexandra addressed her team with brisk efficiency, issuing final instructions before turning to Jack and Lily for farewell. To Jack's surprise, she embraced Lily warmly. "Keep working on those wing designs," she told the girl. "Engineers like you are exactly what my company needs." To Jack, she extended her left hand, her right still secured in the sling. "Thank you again, Jack Reynolds, for everything." Their handshake lingered a moment longer than necessary, an unspoken connection passing between them. Jack was struck by the contradiction in her grip, soft skin but firm pressure, much like the woman herself. "Take care of yourself, Alexandra," he said simply. With a final nod, she was escorted to the waiting helicopter, her security team forming a protective barrier against the distant press. Jack and Lily stood on the porch, watching as the aircraft lifted into the clear morning sky, banking gracefully before heading west. The property seemed strangely empty after the departure of Alexandra's entourage. Jack and Lily returned to their normal routine, school for her, work for him. But the experience had left an indelible mark. Lily couldn't stop talking about Alexandra, recounting every detail of their conversations about flight and engineering. Jack listened patiently, though his own thoughts about their unusual guest remained private. 3 days later, a courier delivered an envelope containing plane tickets to San Francisco, hotel reservations at the prestigious Fairmont, and VIP passes to Horizon Technologies headquarters, all scheduled for the following month. Enclosed was a handwritten note on elegant stationery. "The invitation stands. I hope you'll both consider it. AC." That evening, Jack sat at his grandmother's worn oak table, examining the old recipe book she'd left him, one of the few family heirlooms he hadn't been forced to sell during Sarah's illness. He ran his fingers over the faded handwriting, recipes that had fed generations of Reynolds family members through good times and bad. "What do you think, Sar?" he murmured to the empty kitchen, a habit he'd developed in the years since her death. "Should we go?" No answer came, of course, but as he leafed through the yellowed pages, Jack found himself lingering on his grandmother's note scrawled beside her apple pie recipe. "Sometimes life gives you unexpected gifts. Don't be too proud to accept them." The following day, Jack called the number provided with the tickets and confirmed their attendance. Something had shifted in his carefully constructed world, and for the first time in 5 years, he found himself looking forward to the unknown. San Francisco greeted them with fog and a sleek town car waiting at the airport. The driver, professionally courteous, collected their modest luggage and ushered them into the vehicle's leather interior. Lily pressed her face to the window as they glided through the city streets, her eyes wide at the steep hills and colorful Victorian homes. "Dad, look!" she exclaimed repeatedly, pointing at cable cars, the distant outline of the Golden Gate Bridge, and the soaring skyscrapers of downtown. Jack smiled at her enthusiasm while battling his own discomfort. He had packed his father's cufflinks, the only item of value he'd kept besides his grandfather's truck and grandmother's recipe book, along with his one decent shirt and the tie he'd worn to Sarah's funeral. The clothing felt like inadequate armor for the world they were entering. The Fairmont Hotel rose before them in grand, historic splendor. Jack swallowed hard as the car stopped at the entrance, where uniformed staff immediately approached. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome to the Fairmont." The concierge greeted them. "Ms. Chen has arranged everything for your stay. Please allow us to escort you to your suite." Suite, not room. Jack nodded, maintaining a composed expression for Lily's benefit while following the staff through the opulent lobby. His daughter bounced alongside him, whispering excitedly about the chandeliers and marble floors. Their suite turned out to be larger than the entire first floor of their farmhouse, a spacious living area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom with fixtures that required explanation from the bellhop. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city and bay beyond. "Dad, this is amazing!" Lily exclaimed once they were alone, running from room to room. Look at the bathtub, and there's a welcome basket with my favorite candy. How did they know? Jack examined the elegant gift basket on the dining table, finding a handwritten note. I hope you find everything to your liking. Looking forward to seeing you both tomorrow. AC. Somehow, Alexandra had remembered Lily's casual mention of her favorite chocolate during their conversations at the farmhouse. The thoughtfulness of this detail affected Jack more deeply than the luxury surrounding them. After settling in, they explored the area around the hotel, Lily insisting on riding. A cable car, because we have to, Dad. It's what tourists do. They ate dinner at a small Italian restaurant, where Jack carefully calculated the bill against the spending money he'd brought, only to discover their meal had been taken care of by arrangement with the hotel. The next morning, another town. Car delivered them to Horizon Technologies headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel with the company's distinctive Horizon Line logo emblazoned across its facade. In the vast lobby, a receptionist immediately recognized them. Mr. Reynolds, Miss Reynolds, welcome to Horizon Technologies. Ms. Chen is expecting you. They were escorted to a private elevator that whisked them to the top floor. The doors opened directly into a reception area where Michael waited, tablet in hand as always. Jack, Lily, welcome. He greeted them with genuine warmth that surprised Jack. Alexandra is in a meeting that's running slightly over, but she's asked me to begin your tour. She'll join us shortly. What followed was a dizzying journey through the inner workings of one of the world's most innovative companies. Michael led them through research laboratories where engineers demonstrated prototypes of technologies Jack had never imagined. Lily asked questions that impressed even the senior developers, who exchanged knowing glances at her precocious understanding. In the Educational Technology Division, they were introduced to a program for young innovators that partnered with schools nationwide. The program director, Dr. Eliza Washington, took a special interest in Lily, discussing her science project in detail. We have a STEM camp coming up this summer, Dr. Washington mentioned. Lily would be an excellent candidate. Before Jack could explain that such opportunities were beyond their means, Michael interjected smoothly. I believe Miss Chen has already earmarked a spot for Lily, pending her interest. Jack felt a complex mixture of gratitude and discomfort. Alexandra's generosity was becoming a pattern that both impressed and unsettled him. They were examining a display of the company's accessibility technology evolution when Alexandra appeared. She moved with purpose, her right arm no longer in a sling, but still held carefully. Despite the month that had passed since the crash, Jack was struck by how vividly he remembered her. The precise angle of her jawline, the intensity of her gaze, the measured cadence of her speech. Jack, Lily, she greeted them warmly. I'm so pleased you could come. Lily rushed forward, momentarily forgetting the corporate setting in her excitement. Ms. Chen, your building is amazing. We saw the Neural Interface Lab and the Education Center, and Alexandra laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her professional demeanor. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and please, it's Alexandra. She turned to Jack, extending her hand. Their handshake was brief but carried the same unspoken connection he'd felt at their parting a month ago. How's the arm? He asked. Healing well, she replied. The doctors say I was fortunate. The pilot was skilled, Jack observed, even in crisis. A shadow crossed her features momentarily. Yes, well, I've had a lot of time to think about that night. She glanced at her watch. I have a meeting with investors in 30 minutes, but I'd like to show you both something first. Alexandra led them to her private office, a space that managed to be simultaneously impressive and surprisingly practical. One wall displayed a collection of framed photographs, Alexandra with world leaders receiving awards, speaking at conferences. Among them, Jack noticed a new addition. Alexandra standing between an elderly Asian man and a small aircraft, all three wearing aviator, sunglasses and smiling. My grandfather, she explained, following Jack's gaze, taken last weekend. I've been visiting him more frequently since the accident. She moved to her desk and pressed a button. A section of wall slid open, revealing a private conference room. Inside, a table displayed what appeared to be advanced hardware components and specialized tools. "This is where I work on my personal projects," Alexandra explained. Away from the corporate environment, she picked up what looked like a sleek headset. "This is what I was transporting the night of the crash. The prototype for our newest innovation. It allows people with severe mobility limitations to control complex systems with minimal eye movement and neural inputs." Lily approached reverently, her expression awed. "You made this? With a team of brilliant engineers?" Alexandra nodded. "But yes, the core concept was mine." She glanced at Jack. "I'd like your input on something, actually. The housing has been giving us problems. It's either too fragile or too heavy." Jack raised his eyebrows in surprise, but accepted the component Alexandra handed him, a curved piece of composite material designed to house sensitive electronics. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight distribution, examining the connection points. "What if you honeycomb the interior structure?" he suggested after a moment. "Maintain structural integrity, but reduce weight by about 30%. Alexandra's eyes lit up. "Show me." For the next 20 minutes, Jack sketched his idea on a tablet while Alexandra asked targeted questions. They fell into an easy collaboration that felt surprisingly natural despite their different backgrounds. Lily watched in fascination as her father, the small-town mechanic, discussed advanced material science with the tech CEO as if they were long-time colleagues. Eventually, Michael appeared at the door, discreetly signaling that Alexandra's investors had arrived. "I have to go," she said reluctantly. "But Jack, this is exactly the solution we've been looking for. Would you mind if our engineering team consulted with you further?" Before Jack could respond, Michael added, "The gala begins at 7 this evening. A car will collect you at 6:30. The gala." Jack had almost forgotten the primary reason for their visit, Horizon's product launch celebration. He nodded, suddenly aware again of the vast differences between their worlds. "We'll be ready," he assured them, though the thought of navigating a high-society corporate event filled him with dread. Jack tugged uncomfortably at his collar, the rental tuxedo fitting poorly across his shoulders. In the hotel bathroom, he'd spent 15 minutes wrestling with his father's cufflinks, the tarnished silver squares finally cooperating after numerous attempts. His reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, a man playing dress-up, about to walk into a world where he didn't belong. "Dad, you look so handsome." Lily emerged from her bedroom in a new dress Alexandra had sent over that afternoon, midnight. Blue with subtle sparkles that reminded Jack of the night sky over their farmhouse. "And you look beautiful, kiddo." He smiled, momentarily forgetting his discomfort. "Your mom would be so proud." The gala was held in the magnificent rotunda of San Francisco City Hall, transformed for the evening into a showcase of technology and opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the marble interior, while interactive displays highlighted Horizon's innovations. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that Jack couldn't pronounce. Lily clutched his arm. As they entered, her earlier excitement tempered by the intimidating grandeur. Jack spotted Alexandra immediately, a commanding presence in a simple black gown, surrounded by attentive executives and dignitaries. She caught his eye across the room and excused herself from her conversation. "You made it," she said warmly, approaching them. "Lily, you look lovely." "And Jack," she paused, her gaze taking in his uncomfortable formal wear with a hint of amusement. "Very distinguished." "I feel like an imposter," Jack admitted quietly. "Trust me." Alexandra leaned closer. "Half the people here feel the same way. They're just better at hiding it." She offered her arm. "Come, there are some people I'd like you to meet." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions. Alexandra skillfully contextualized Jack's presence, emphasizing his mechanical ingenuity and his contribution to the prototype housing design without mentioning the crash. Jack appreciated her discretion and found himself relaxing slightly as engineers engaged him in genuine conversation about materials and structural design. Lily was introduced to Dr. Washington again, who promptly whisked her off to meet young engineers from the educational outreach program. Jack watched his daughter bloom under the attention, her natural intelligence shining in this environment that valued such gifts. "She's remarkable," Alexandra observed, appearing at his side with 2 glasses of water. "Much like her father." Jack accepted the water gratefully. "She deserves opportunities I can't give her." "Perhaps that could change," Alexandra suggested cryptically. Before Jack could question her meaning, a tall, silver-haired man approached them, with the confident stride of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "Alexandra," the man greeted her with practiced charm. "Spectacular event, as always." Alexandra's posture shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, but Jack caught the slight stiffening of her shoulders. "Victor," she acknowledged coolly, "I wasn't aware you were on the guest list." "Last-minute addition," Victor smiled, his gaze sliding to Jack. "And who is your friend?" "Jack Reynolds," Alexandra replied, "a talented mechanical engineer consulting on our new prototype." "Jack, this is Victor Mercer, CEO of Mercer Technologies." Jack recognized the name immediately. Horizon's chief competitor and, if business magazines were to be believed, Alexandra's longtime rival. The men shook hands, Victor's grip unnecessarily firm. "Consulting, Victor's tone suggested he didn't believe it. "How fortuitous that Ms. Chen found you." "Excuse us, Victor," Alexandra said smoothly. "I need to borrow Jack for a moment." She guided Jack toward a quieter corner of the rotunda, her expression composed but eyes alert. "I apologize for that. Victor and I have a complicated history." "Corporate rivalry?" Jack asked. "Among other things," Alexandra sighed. "He's been trying to acquire Horizon's accessibility technology for years, first through partnership offers, then through hiring away my engineers, and lately through less ethical means." Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Alexandra hesitated, then made a decision. "There's something I haven't told you about the night of the crash. The NTSB investigation found irregularities, evidence suggesting the plane's fuel line may have been tampered with." Jack felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "Sabotage? It's being investigated," Alexandra said carefully. "Nothing conclusive yet." Their conversation was interrupted by the beginning of the formal presentation. Alexandra excused herself to prepare for her keynote speech, leaving Jack to find Lily and take their seats near the front, positions of honor Alexandra had arranged. The lights dimmed as Alexandra took the stage, commanding the attention of the assembled tech elite with natural authority. She spoke eloquently about Horizon's mission to create technology that expanded human potential, particularly for those with disabilities. Jack found himself captivated by her vision, her genuine passion evident beneath the polished corporate presentation. "Tonight," Alexandra concluded, "we unveil the next evolution in accessibility technology. The Horizon neural interface will allow individuals with severe mobility limitations to control complex systems with minimal physical input." The demonstration that followed was remarkable. A young woman with advanced ALS used the sleek headset to operate computers, environmental controls, and communication systems using only subtle eye movements and neural impulses. The audience applauded enthusiastically as the woman, speaking through the device, explained how the technology would transform her independence. As the presentation ended and the crowd dispersed for more networking, Jack noticed a hotel staff member discreetly hand him a folded note. Inside was a message in Alexandra's handwriting. "Meet me in the side office. Important." Jack found the designated room and entered to find Alexandra bent over a laptop, her expression tense. "Close the door," she instructed without looking up. "I need your eyes on something." She turned the screen toward him. "These are photos from the NTSB investigation of my plane. You have mechanical experience. What do you see?" Jack studied the images carefully, professional interest overriding his confusion about being consulted. The photos showed the damaged fuel system from Alexandra's aircraft, focusing on specific components. This fuel line was deliberately compromised, he said after a moment, pointing to a particular image. See this scoring mark? That's not accidental damage or mechanical failure. Someone knew exactly where to create a slow leak that would cause engine failure after takeoff, but before you reached your destination. Alexandra's expression darkened. You're certain? I spent 10 years identifying sabotage on military vehicles in combat zones, Jack confirmed. This is deliberate. She sat back, absorbing this information. I suspected as much, but needed confirmation from someone I could trust. The weight of her words, that she considered him trustworthy, wasn't lost on Jack. You think Mercer is behind this? I don't have proof, Alexandra said carefully, but the timing is suspicious. The prototype I was carrying contained proprietary neural interface algorithms that would have given whoever possessed them a significant competitive advantage. Jack's mind raced. You need to report this to the authorities. I have, Alexandra assured him. But corporate espionage is difficult to prove, and an accusation against Mercer without concrete evidence would create more problems than solutions. She closed the laptop, her decision made. Jack, I need to ask you something important. The housing modifications you suggested for the neural interface, they've significantly improved the prototype's functionality. I'd like to offer you a position at Horizon Technologies, heading a new practical applications division. The abrupt change of subject caught Jack off guard. What? You have a unique perspective and skill set that my engineers lack. Practical. Experience with how things work in the real world, not just in theory. And Lily could attend the best schools in San Francisco, participate in our Young Innovators program. Jack's mind reeled at the offer, at its implications for him and Lily, at the dramatic change it represented. Before he could formulate a response, Michael burst into the room, his typically composed demeanor shattered. Alexandra, we have a security breach, he reported urgently. Someone's attempting to access the prototype server remotely. The pattern matches the previous attempts. Alexandra was on her feet instantly. Lock down the system. Full security protocol. As Michael rushed out, Alexandra turned to Jack. I need to handle this. Think about my offer. We'll talk later. Left alone in the office, Jack found himself staring at the laptop screen, still displaying the evidence of sabotage. The evening had taken an unexpected turn, revealing dangers he hadn't anticipated and opportunities he'd never imagined. He thought of Lily, thriving among the young engineers, and of Alexandra's world of innovation and purpose. Then he thought of his quiet farmhouse, his grandfather's truck, and the simple life he'd built. The choice before him seemed impossible: remain in the comfortable limitations of his familiar world, or step into an unknown future filled with both promise and peril. 3 days after returning home from San Francisco, Jack stood in his newly repaired truck, staring at the farmhouse that had sheltered generations of his family. Alexandra's offer echoed in his mind, presenting a future he'd never imagined possible. The security badge she'd given him, granting temporary access to Horizon's facilities, sat on the kitchen table, a tangible link to that other world. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Alexandra. Have you considered my offer? She asked without preamble. I have, Jack replied. It's just a big change. I understand, Alexandra said, her tone softening, but sometimes big changes are worth the risk. Jack glanced toward the house, where Lily was working on her science project, now significantly advanced after her time at Horizon Technologies. It's not just me I have to consider. Of course, Alexandra acknowledged. Lily's future is paramount. That's partly why I'm calling. Dr. Washington has formally invited Lily to join our Young Innovators summer program. Full scholarship, Jack closed his eyes, conflicted. The opportunity for Lily was extraordinary, but accepting would mean further obligation to Alexandra. That's incredibly generous. It's not generosity, Jack. It's investment in talent. Alexandra paused. There's something else you should know. The security breach at the gala, it was more serious than we initially thought. Someone accessed preliminary schematics for the neural interface. Mercer? Jack asked. We can't prove it yet, Alexandra replied. But yes, likely. Which brings me to another reason for my call. The security team has identified an unusual access pattern in our systems over the past month, specifically targeting information about you and Lily. Jack straightened, paternal instinct flaring. What kind of information? Background checks, residential details, travel arrangements. Nothing immediately concerning, but enough to suggest you've drawn attention you wouldn't have had without your connection to me and Horizon. The implication was clear. Jack and Lily's involvement with Alexandra had potentially placed them in the crosshairs of corporate espionage. What are you saying exactly? Jack asked, though he already knew. I'm saying that whether or not you accept my job offer, you and Lily should consider relocating temporarily, at least until we've contained the security situation. Alexandra's voice was carefully neutral, but Jack detected genuine concern beneath. Her professional tone. Moved to San Francisco, Jack clarified. It would be the safest option, Alexandra confirmed. I've taken the liberty of arranging secure accommodations, accompany residents with full security protocols. No obligation regarding employment. This is purely a safety precaution. Jack watched through the window as Lily adjusted a component. On her science project model, her face alight with concentration. Let me think about it, he said finally. After ending the call, Jack entered the house to find a package had been delivered. A small, unmarked envelope containing photographs of him and Lily at the San Francisco airport, at the Horizon Technologies building, and entering their hotel. No note, no explanation, just a clear message. They were being watched. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Jack called Alexandra back. We'll come, he said simply, but I need to understand exactly what we're walking into. I'll send the jet tomorrow, Alexandra replied, relief evident in her voice. And Jack, thank you for trusting me. The following days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Jack took a leave of absence from both jobs, arranged for Mrs. Rodriguez to watch the house, and packed only essentials. He told Lily they were going to San Francisco for her to attend a special science program, presenting it as an adventure rather than a security concern. 3 days after receiving the anonymous photographs, Jack and Lily boarded Alexandra's private jet. As the farmhouse receded below them, Jack felt a strange mixture of apprehension and anticipation. They were leaving behind everything familiar, flying toward uncertainty, and toward Alexandra Chen, the woman whose crashed plane had inexplicably altered the trajectory of their lives. Dad, Lily asked, looking up from her tablet where she'd been studying materials from the Young Innovators program, are we doing the right thing? Jack placed his hand over hers, finding comfort in the one certainty in his shifting world. I don't know, kiddo, but we're doing it together. Alexandra's secure accommodations turned out to be a stunning penthouse apartment overlooking the bay, occupying the entire top floor of an exclusive building owned by Horizon Technologies. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed panoramic views of the Golden Gate Bridge, while state-of-the-art security systems, discreetly integrated into the elegant decor, provided constant protection. This is where you live? Jack asked as Alexandra gave them a brief tour. She shook her head. No, this is one of Horizon's executive residences used for visiting dignitaries or team members requiring enhanced security. My place is actually much smaller. Jack found this difficult to believe, but appreciated her attempt to minimize the wealth gap between them. The apartment contained 3 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a living space larger than Jack's entire farmhouse. Lily ran from room to room in amazement, eventually discovering that the smaller bedroom had been furnished specifically for her, complete with a junior engineering workstation and science books. Security teams monitor the building perimeter 24/7, Alexandra explained, indicating discrete cameras and sensor panels. Your biometrics have been added to the system, so you'll have full access to all facilities. Diana will be your primary security contact. Jack nodded, recognizing the former military woman who had been part of Alexandra's team after the crash. Is all this really necessary? Alexandra's expression turned serious. We've identified 3 separate intrusion attempts into our personnel. Files regarding you and Lily. Someone is very interested in your connection to Horizon Technologies. Later that evening, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the excitement, Jack found Alexandra in the living room, working on her tablet. She'd changed from her business attire into simple loungewear, the most casual he'd ever seen her, yet still somehow elegant. "She's finally down," Jack said, accepting the glass of whiskey Alexandra offered. "Thank you for all this, but I'm still not sure I understand what's happening." Alexandra set aside her tablet. "The Icarus project represents a technological breakthrough worth billions, not just the device itself, but the algorithms and neural interface technology behind it. Someone, likely Mercer, has been trying to obtain that technology through increasingly aggressive means. And they think I'm involved somehow. They know you saved my life after the crash," Alexandra explained. "They likely suspect I shared information with you, or that you might have salvaged something from the wreckage." Jack frowned. "But I didn't." "They don't know that," Alexandra pointed out. "And more importantly, they've seen us together at Horizon headquarters, collaborating on the prototype housing. From the outside, it appears you've become a trusted associate." "Which I'm not," Jack said carefully. Alexandra met his gaze directly. "Aren't you?" The question hung between them, laden with meanings beyond professional association. Jack looked away first, uncomfortable with the implications. "My offer still stands," Alexandra continued after a moment. "Head of Practical Applications Division. The housing modifications you suggested have already improved performance by 38%. That kind of practical ingenuity is exactly what Horizon needs," Jack sighed. "I'm a mechanic and a part-time waiter, Alexandra. I fix engines and serve coffee. I don't belong in a tech company." "You're underselling yourself," Alexandra countered. "You were a senior mechanical specialist in the army, responsible for maintaining mission-critical equipment in combat zones. You identified sabotage in my plane that professional investigators missed. You solved a design problem that stumped my engineering team." She leaned forward. "Credentials and titles are just window dressing, Jack. I care about ability." Before Jack could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a single line. "Ask Chen about the real reason behind Project Icarus." Jack stared at the message, then showed it to Alexandra. Her expression remained neutral, but a subtle tension appeared around her eyes. "Attempting to create discord," she said dismissively. "Standard corporate espionage tactic. Is there a real reason I should know about?" Jack pressed. Alexandra hesitated, then stood. "Come with me. There's something I should show you." She led him to her home office and activated a secure terminal. "What I'm about to share is known only to 5 people in the company." The screen displayed medical imaging, brain scans labeled with Alexandra's name and a date from 3 years earlier. "I developed early-onset Parkinson's disease," she said quietly. "The Icarus neural interface technology was initially conceived as a solution for my own condition. It's since evolved into something much broader, but the personal motivation remains." Jack absorbed this revelation, understanding dawning. "That's why this matters so much to you." Alexandra nodded. "Not just for me, for millions like me. And Mercer wants to control it, patent it, and profit from it, limiting access to those who can afford premium prices." The elegant invitation to Horizon's official product launch appeared on the coffee table between them, embossed with the company logo and tomorrow's date, the event that would introduce Icarus to the world and potentially make it a target for those who sought to control it. The San Francisco Convention Center buzzed with anticipation. Tech journalists, industry executives, accessibility advocates, and medical professionals filled the auditorium, awaiting Horizon Technologies' revolutionary announcement. Behind the scenes, Jack adjusted Lily's headset, a simplified version of the Icarus prototype, customized for her demonstration role. "Nervous, kiddo?" he asked, checking the connections one last time. Lily shook her head, excitement evident in her bright eyes. "Alexandra said I'm a natural. I just have to focus on the targets, and the headset does the rest." Jack smiled, marveling at his daughter's confidence in this high-stakes environment. When Alexandra had asked if Lily would participate in the demonstration, showing how intuitive the interface was, even for young users, Lily had jumped at the chance. Now she would be on stage in front of thousands, representing a technology that could change countless lives. 5 minutes to curtain, a stage manager announced, hurrying past. Jack gave Lily's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before heading to his assigned position. As a last-minute addition to the security team, Alexandra's idea, given his military background and first-hand knowledge of the sabotage attempts, he had a unique vantage point of both the stage and audience. Diana intercepted him near the side. "Entrance. Security sweep is complete. All personnel have been verified." She handed him an earpiece. "Channel 3 if you spot anything unusual." Jack positioned himself at the left wing of the stage, scanning the packed auditorium. His gaze paused on a familiar silver-haired figure in the front row, Victor Mercer watching the stage with calculated interest. Jack tapped his earpiece. "Mercer is here. Front row, center." "Acknowledged," Diana's voice replied. "We're tracking him." The lights dimmed, and Alexandra Chen walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. She wore a simple charcoal suit, her dark hair framing a face composed with professional confidence. Only Jack, who had come to read her subtle expressions, noticed the slight tension in her jawline, the only indication of what this moment truly meant to her personally. "Thank you for joining us today," Alexandra began, her voice steady and commanding. "At Horizon Technologies, we've always believed that technology should expand human potential, not just for some, but for all." She outlined the history of Horizon's accessibility initiatives, building toward the revelation of their newest innovation. Jack divided his attention between her presentation and the audience, alert for any suspicious movement. "Today, we introduce the next evolution in neural interface technology," Alexandra announced. "A system that translates minimal physical input into complex digital commands, offering unprecedented independence to individuals with mobility limitations." The main screen displayed dramatic before and after scenarios, individuals with severe physical disabilities gaining new abilities to communicate, control their environments, and express themselves creatively. The audience responded with increasing enthusiasm as the presentation progressed. "But rather than just tell you about this technology," Alexandra continued, "I'd like to show you how intuitive it is. Even a first-time user can master the basics. In minutes." This was Lily's cue. Jack watched proudly as his daughter walked confidently onto the stage, the specialized headset gleaming against her dark hair. Alexandra introduced her warmly, explaining that Lily had no prior experience with neural interfaces before this week. On the massive screen behind them, a complex virtual environment appeared, a simulation designed to demonstrate the precise control the headset offered. Lily settled into the demonstration chair and with remarkable composure began navigating the interface using only subtle eye movements and neural impulses. The audience watched in awe as she manipulated virtual objects, typed messages, and even created digital art, all without moving her hands. The precision was astonishing, especially from a 12-year-old who had never used such technology until recently. Jack scanned the crowd continuously, noting with unease that Mercer had left his seat. A moment later, Diana's voice came through his earpiece. "Subject is moving toward the west corridor, likely heading to the restrooms." "I'll check," Jack responded, slipping discreetly from his position. He followed the path Mercer had taken, passing through a service corridor that connected to the west wing of the convention center. The hallway was eerily quiet compared to the presentation hall, the sound of Alexandra's voice fading behind him. Movement ahead caught his attention. Not Mercer, but someone in a convention center staff uniform, accessing a restricted maintenance panel. Jack slowed his approach, instinct warning him something wasn't right. The staff member inserted a device into the panel, then quickly closed it before hurrying away. Jack tapped his earpiece. "Possible security breach, West Corridor maintenance panel, unknown device planted." Before Diana could respond, the lights in the corridor flickered. Jack rushed to the panel, years of military training kicking in. Using his pocket knife, he pried open the cover to find a small electronic device wired into the building's power system. Not a bomb, but some kind of specialized disruption unit. The implications hit him instantly. The Icarus demonstration relied on precise power regulation and secure network connections. This device was designed to disrupt both, potentially sabotaging the entire presentation at its crucial moment. Jack had seconds to decide. Attempt to disconnect the device himself, potentially triggering whatever failsafe it might have, or call for the technical team and risk losing precious time. His fingers hovered over the wiring as Lily's voice came through the speakers from the main hall, explaining how the neural interface was changing her understanding of technology. Jack's old army knife, a constant companion carried in his pocket through countless missions, became suddenly vital as he carefully traced the device's wiring. The sabotage unit was sophisticated, designed to create a cascading power failure. Precisely when the Icarus demonstration reached its most critical phase, with careful precision, Jack disconnected the primary trigger mechanism, temporarily neutralizing the immediate threat. "Diana," he whispered into his earpiece, "device partially disabled, but we need tech security at the West Corridor panel immediately. And find Mercer. This has his fingerprints all over it." "Copy that. Tech team en route." Mercer was last seen heading toward the server room level. Jack's blood ran cold. The maintenance panel sabotage was likely just a diversion. The real target would be the servers housing Icarus's proprietary algorithms and neural mapping data, the technological crown jewels of Horizon Technologies. "I'm heading to the server room," Jack decided. "Send backup." He sprinted toward the emergency stairwell, taking the steps two at a time. In the distance, he could hear Alexandra's voice continuing the presentation, unaware of the threat unfolding behind the scenes. The thought of Lily on that stage, potentially in danger, fueled his urgency. The server room level was eerily quiet, the usual technicians presumably watching the presentation. Jack moved silently down the corridor, his military training resurfacing in his measured steps and heightened awareness. At the end of the hallway, the server room door stood ajar, a critical security breach. Inside, Jack found not Mercer himself, but a young man in a maintenance uniform, frantically downloading data from a terminal. The man looked up in alarm, his hand moving toward his pocket. "Don't," Jack warned, his voice carrying the authority of his former military rank. The man ignored the warning, pulling out a small taser. Jack reacted instinctively, deflecting the man's arm and disarming him with a swift, practiced movement. The would-be thief attempted to flee, but Jack subdued him with minimal force, securing his hands with a cable tie from a nearby workstation. "Who sent you?" Jack demanded. "I don't know what you're talking about," the man replied unconvincingly. "I'm just IT maintenance." Jack glanced at the terminal screen, which displayed a file transfer in progress. Proprietary Icarus data being copied to an external device. "Try again. Who are you working for?" A slow clapping from the doorway interrupted them. Victor Mercer stood there, his aristocratic features arranged in a mask of amused disdain. "Impressive, Mr. Reynolds," Mercer said smoothly. "From small-town mechanic to corporate security in just a few weeks, Alexandra certainly knows how to pick them." "Step away from the door," Jack ordered. Mercer sighed dramatically. "Or what? You'll tackle me like my unfortunate associate here?" "I'm simply touring the facility, a courtesy extended to visiting executives, while your associate steals proprietary technology," Jack countered. A serious accusation. Mercer smiled thinly. "One you'd find difficult to prove, especially given that I'm merely standing in a doorway." He glanced at his watch. "About now, I believe Alexandra is moving to the neural interface demonstration with your charming daughter. Shame, if anything, were to interrupt that moment." The implied threat to Lily sent a surge of protective rage through Jack, but years of military discipline kept him focused. "Whatever you're planning won't work." "It already has," Mercer replied. "While you've been distracted with this rather obvious attempt, my team has been executing a much more sophisticated operation. The Icarus algorithms are being extracted from multiple access points simultaneously. As if on cue, alarm lights began flashing in the server room, a system-wide security breach. Jack maintained his position between Mercer and the captured associate, torn between pursuing Mercer and securing the server room. Alexandra's voice suddenly came through his earpiece. "Jack, where are you? Something's wrong with the network. The demonstration is starting to glitch." Before Jack could respond, Mercer smirked. "Decision time, hero. Chase me or save the presentation." He backed away, adding, "Oh, and your daughter seems to be having some trouble with that headset. Neural interfaces can be so unpredictable when compromised." The mention of Lily galvanized Jack. He quickly secured the captured thief to a server rack, then accessed the terminal to halt the ongoing data theft. His fingers flew across the keyboard, implementing the emergency protocols Diana had briefed him on earlier. "Diana," he called into his earpiece, "Mercer is escaping East Corridor from server level. I'm initiating system lockdown and heading back to the presentation." Jack raced back toward the main hall, heart pounding. On stage, he could see Lily looking confused as the neural interface began behaving erratically. Alexandra maintained her professional composure, but Jack could read the concern in her stance. The sabotage was more insidious than a simple power disruption. Someone had introduced a virus into the neural interface system itself, potentially placing Lily in danger. Jack burst through the backstage door just as Alexandra announced a brief technical pause in the demonstration. "It's Mercer," Jack told her urgently. "He's compromised the system. We need to get that headset off Lily now." Alexandra's eyes widened. In understanding, without hesitation, she returned to the stage with Jack close behind. With remarkable poise, she explained to the audience that they would be shifting to our backup demonstration system while smoothly removing the headset. From Lily, the moment the device left Lily's head, Jack felt a wave of relief. He escorted his daughter backstage, while Alexandra continued addressing the crowd, her voice never betraying the crisis unfolding behind the scenes. "Dad, what's happening?" Lily asked, confused by the sudden change. "Just a security precaution," Jack assured her, checking her for any signs of distress. "Are you feeling okay?" Lily nodded. The headset started showing weird patterns that weren't part of the demonstration. It was like someone else was controlling it. Jack's protective instincts flared anew. Mercer hadn't just attempted to steal technology, he'd risked harming a child in the process. The realization hardened Jack's resolve as Diana approached with an urgent update. "We've contained the server room breach," she reported, "but Mercer's escaped the building, and he's taken something with him." The hospital room was filled with flowers, elegant arrangements in tasteful vases that transformed the clinical space into something almost pleasant. Jack sat beside Lily's bed, watching as doctors conducted a final neural scan. Although the Compromised headset had been removed quickly. Alexandra had insisted on comprehensive medical evaluation to ensure there were no lasting effects. "All readings are normal, Mr. Reynolds," the neurologist confirmed, reviewing the results. "Your daughter shows no signs of neural disruption. She's perfectly healthy." Jack exhaled deeply, tension draining from his shoulders. Lily, already bored with being a patient, looked up from her tablet. "Can we go now, Dad? I told you I felt fine." "Just following protocol, kiddo." Jack smiled, ruffling her hair. "Better safe than sorry." As the medical team departed, Alexandra appeared in the doorway. She had maintained her public composure throughout the chaotic aftermath of the presentation, but now, in the privacy of the hospital room, fatigue showed in the shadows beneath her eyes. "Good news?" she asked. Jack nodded. "Clean bill of health." Alexandra's. Relief was visible as she approached Lily's bedside. "I'm so sorry you went through this. The security breach should never have reached the demonstration systems." "It wasn't your fault," Lily said with a shrug. "It was that mean Mr. Mercer, right? Dad explained everything." Alexandra smiled at Lily's resilience. "Yes, it was. But we'll handle him." She turned to Jack. "The authorities have issued a warrant for Victor's arrest. The evidence from the server room is irrefutable." "And the technology he stole?" Jack asked quietly. "Incomplete," Alexandra replied. "Our security team managed to corrupt key components during transfer. What Victor has is essentially unusable without the complete algorithm sequence." Jack's former employers had called twice during their hospital stay, concerned about his extended absence. The garage had offered to hold his position for another week. The diner had already hired a replacement. The reality of his interrupted life hung between Jack and Alexandra, unspoken but present. "I still want you to consider my offer," Alexandra said, seemingly reading his thoughts. "After what you did today, Jack, you belong at Horizon. Your instincts and practical thinking saved not just the technology, but potentially lives." An orderly arrived with discharge papers, interrupting the moment. As Jack completed the forms, he caught sight of the elegant flower arrangement on the bedside table. The small card nestled among the blooms read simply, "To New Beginnings, AC." 6 months later, Jack stood at the window of his new home, a modest but comfortable 3-bedroom house in a quiet San Francisco neighborhood, equidistant between Horizon Technologies headquarters and Lily's new school. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the small garden where native plants were beginning to establish themselves. It wasn't the sprawling farmland of his previous life, but it had become home nonetheless. In the kitchen, Lily prepared for school, excitedly discussing her latest project with the Young Innovators program. Her transformation had been remarkable, from a quiet, sometimes withdrawn child to a confident young person thriving in an environment that celebrated her intelligence and creativity. "Dad," Ms. Washington says, "my accessibility design might qualify." For the Junior Patent Program," Lily called out, stuffing notebooks into her backpack. "Can you believe it? I could have a real patent before I'm 13. Jack smiled, still adjusting to this new reality where his daughter spoke casually about patents and neural interfaces. "That's amazing, Lily Pad. Your mom would be so proud." The mention of Sarah no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Time and new beginnings had softened the edges of loss, allowing space for both remembrance and forward movement. Jack's phone buzzed with a message from his team at Horizon. As Director of Practical Applications, he oversaw the development of real-world implementations for the company's theoretical innovations. His department had quickly become essential, bringing a grounded perspective that balanced the sometimes overly ambitious visions of the research division. The transition hadn't been without challenges. Jack had initially felt like an imposter among the advanced degree holders and lifelong tech enthusiasts. But his practical approach and mechanical intuition had earned respect, and he'd gradually found his place in Alexandra's world of innovation. The final payment for Sarah's medical bills had been processed the previous week, a milestone that represented closure on the financial burden that had defined his life for years. Jack had marked the occasion quietly, visiting the ocean with Lily to scatter a small portion of Sarah's ashes, a symbolic release of the past. "Ready to go?" Lily asked, appearing at his side. Jack nodded, picking up his own bag, a leather satchel, that had replaced his mechanic's toolbox as his daily companion. "Alexandra's joining us for dinner tonight, remember?" Lily's face lit up. "I remember. I'm going to show her my new design sketches." As they stepped outside, Jack noticed the neighbor's roses blooming, the same variety Sarah had once planted at the farmhouse. Some connections, he reflected, remained unbroken despite all the changes life brought. 1 year to the day after the plane crash, Jack, Lily, and Alexandra stood in the cornfield where it had all begun. The farmhouse behind them looked different now, renovated but respectful of its history, a weekend retreat rather than a daily burden. Local contractors had restored the sagging porch, repaired the roof, and updated the systems, but the soul of the place remained intact. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Jack said, gazing at the spot where he'd pulled Alexandra from the burning wreckage. The field had long since recovered, corn growing tall and healthy where destruction had once scarred the earth. Alexandra nodded, unconsciously touching her right arm, which occasionally ached in cold weather, a permanent reminder of that stormy night. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, other times like another lifetime." Lily ran ahead of them, leading a group of local children through a technology workshop set up in the barn. The Horizon Rural Education Initiative, Alexandra's new foundation, had chosen this community for its pilot program, bringing STEM education to areas typically overlooked by the tech industry. "She's a natural teacher," Alexandra observed, watching Lily patiently explain circuit principles to a younger child. Like her mother, Jack smiled. Sarah could make anyone understand even the most complex environmental concepts. They walked in comfortable silence toward a young oak tree they'd planted that morning near the crash site, a living marker of transformation. "I kept it, you know," Alexandra said suddenly, reaching into her pocket to produce a tattered emergency blanket, carefully folded. "To remind myself of what matters." Jack understood. In his wallet, where Sarah's photo had once resided alone, now sat a family picture taken at Lily's science competition. The three of them, smiling together, Lily proudly holding her first place ribbon. As they approached the farmhouse, Jack noticed his restored truck parked beside Alexandra's new vehicle, a practical SUV that had replaced her executive sedan. The juxtaposition of old and new, practical and innovative, seemed a fitting metaphor for the life they'd built. Inside, Jack moved Sarah's photograph from its solitary place of honor to join the new family picture on the mantel, not replacing the past, but allowing it to exist alongside the present. A continuation rather than an ending. "Ready?" Alexandra asked, waiting by the door as Lily gathered the last of the workshop supplies. Jack took one final look around the farmhouse that had sheltered generations of his family. The weight of obligation that had once made it feel like a burden had lifted, replaced by appreciation for its place in his journey. "Ready?" he confirmed, taking Alexandra's hand as they stepped outside. Ahead of them, Lily bounded toward the vehicles, already planning their next adventure. Behind them, the newly planted oak reached toward the sky, its roots taking hold in soil that had witnessed both disaster and renewal, much like the family now driving away, facing forward together.